The billing alert hit my inbox at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, flagging vendor payments that shouldn't exist. I'm Percival Zimmerman, 42, compliance counsel at a boutique white-collar firm in San Jose. 20 years of practice taught me to trust numbers more than people. Numbers don't lie. People do. The alert showed 3 payments to Meridian Legal Services, each for $15,000, each processed in the last month. Each tied to client onboarding for cases I was handling personally. I'd never heard of Meridian Legal Services. Our case management system showed the payments as approved vendor expenses. Standard client intake support. The digital signatures looked legitimate. The authorization codes matched our internal protocols. Everything appeared normal except for one detail. I hadn't authorized any of it. My fingers moved across the keyboard, pulling up client files. The Hartwell Industries merger, the Blackstone acquisition, the Pinnacle restructuring. All major cases. All requiring extensive due diligence. All showing Meridian Legal Services as the primary vendor for document review and client verification. The timestamps told a different story. Each payment was processed during hours when I was in depositions or court hearings. Each authorization came through the system using my access credentials. Each approval bypassed the normal partner review process. Someone had been very careful, very methodical, very wrong. I opened the vendor database. Meridian Legal Services showed a registration date of 3 months ago. The contact information listed a P.O. box in Fremont. The business license number came back invalid when I ran it through the state database. A ghost company. Processing real payments. Using my authorization. My phone buzzed. A text from Reed Elmhurst, the contract attorney I'd been working with on these cases. Still at the office? Saw your light on. I looked up. My office was dark except for the computer screen. The building was empty. The parking lot showed only my car under the security lights. Reed wasn't here. Reed couldn't see my office from anywhere. But Reed knew I was working late. Reed knew exactly what I was looking at. The billing alert refreshed. A new payment had just processed. Meridian Legal Services. $20,000. My authorization. My digital signature. Processed 30 seconds ago while I sat at my desk, watching it happen. The Meridian payment started 6 months earlier, right after Reed Elmhurst joined our firm as a contract attorney. I'd hired Reed myself. His resume showed 15 years of corporate law experience. References checked out. Bar standing was clean. He specialized in merger documentation and due diligence review, exactly what we needed for our expanding white-collar practice. Reed integrated seamlessly into our workflow. He understood our case management protocols. He learned our billing systems quickly. He even suggested efficiency improvements that saved us hours on document review. We co-led a multi-firm merger as the lead legal team. The Hartwell Industries acquisition was our biggest case that quarter. Reed handled the preliminary document review while I managed client relations and regulatory filings. The division of labor worked perfectly. Too perfectly. I pulled up the Hartwell file from our archived cases. The initial client intake showed standard vendor assignments. Document review went to our usual contractors. Client verification went through our established channels. Everything looked normal until the 3rd week of the engagement. That's when Meridian Legal Services appeared. The change order was subtle. A memo in the file suggested our regular vendors were overloaded. Reed had recommended Meridian as a backup option. The pricing was competitive. The turnaround time was faster. The quality of work was excellent. I remembered approving the switch. Reed had presented it as a temporary solution. Just for this one case. Just to meet our deadline. But Meridian never left. I traced their involvement through subsequent cases. The Blackstone acquisition. The Pinnacle restructuring. The Morrison due diligence. Each time Meridian appeared as the primary vendor. Each time Reed managed the relationship. Each time, the payments increased. The pattern was elegant in its simplicity. Reed would identify cases requiring extensive client onboarding. He would recommend Meridian for document review and verification services. He would process the vendor agreements through our system. The payments would flow automatically through our accounts payable. I never questioned it because Reed handled the details. I trusted his judgment. I focused on the legal strategy while he managed the operational logistics. The trust was my mistake. I opened our vendor payment history and filtered by Meridian Legal Services. The total was staggering, $340,000 over 6 months, all authorized through my credentials, all processed during times when I was unavailable to verify the transactions. The digital forensics were damning. Every payment coincided with my calendar entries. Depositions, court hearings, client meetings, times when Reed knew I couldn't access the system to review the transactions in real time. My phone rang. Reed's name appeared on the caller ID. Working late again? His voice carried the familiar tone of collegial concern. You've been putting in long hours on these cases. Just reviewing some vendor payments, I said. Making sure everything's in order. A pause. Brief but noticeable. Anything I can help with? I've been managing most of the vendor relationships lately. I'm sure you have. Another pause. Longer this time. Percival, is everything okay? You sound tense. I looked at my computer screen. The Meridian payment history filled the monitor. $340,000 in unauthorized transactions. 6 months of systematic fraud. All processed under my authorization while Reed managed the operational details. Everything's fine, I said. Just being thorough. Of course. That's what makes you such a good attorney, always double-checking the details. The line went quiet. I could hear Reed breathing on the other. I'll let you get back to work, he said finally. See you tomorrow. The call ended. I sat in the dark office, staring at this on my screen. Reed had been stealing from our clients, using my credentials, exploiting my trust, creating a ghost company to process fraudulent payments while I focused on the legal work. But the real revelation wasn't the theft itself. It was the sophistication of the operation. Reed hadn't just stolen money. He had systematically excluded me from the client onboarding process for every major case we handled together. While I managed the legal strategy, Reed controlled the client relationships. While I filed motions and attended hearings, Reed processed vendor payments and managed document review. While I built our reputation in court, Reed built his own network of contacts and revenue streams. He hadn't just betrayed my trust, he had methodically cut me out of my own practice. I pulled up the vendor database one more time. Meridian Legal Services showed Reed Elmhurst as the primary contact. The business address was a mail forwarding service in Fremont. The bank account was registered to R. Elmhurst Consulting. Reed hadn't even bothered to hide his identity. He had used his own name and contact information. The audacity was breathtaking. My computer chimed with a new email notification. The sender was Reed Elmhurst. The subject line read, "Tomorrow's schedule." I opened the message. It contained a detailed agenda for our upcoming client meetings. The Morrison due diligence review. The Patterson acquisition planning. The Westfield compliance audit. All cases requiring extensive client onboarding. All opportunities for vendor payments. All managed through Reed's operational oversight. The email ended with a single line, looking to another productive day working together. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness. 6 months of systematic fraud, $340,000 in unauthorized payments. A trusted colleague who had turned my own practice against me. But now I had the hush abwura. Now I knew the scope of the betrayal. Tomorrow, Reed Elmhurst would discover that his productive days were over. I arrived at the office at 7:30 the next morning. Reed's car wasn't in the parking lot yet. Good. I needed time to prepare. I printed every document from my investigation. Bank statements, vendor contracts, email logs, payment authorizations. The filled 3 manila folders, each labeled with precise dates and transaction amounts. At 8:15, Reed walked through the front door carrying his usual coffee and newspaper. He nodded at me through the glass partition of my office. Same casual smile, same confident stride. "Morning, Percival. Ready for the Morrison meeting? I gestured toward the conference room. We need to talk first. Reed's expression shifted slightly. The smile remained, but his eyes narrowed. Everything okay? I placed the first folder on the conference table. Meridian Legal Services. Ring a bell? The color drained from Reed's face. He set down his coffee with deliberate care. I'm not sure what you're getting at. $340,000 in unauthorized vendor payments. All processed through your ghost company. All using my credentials and client trust accounts. Reed sat down slowly. His hands remained steady, but I noticed the slight tremor in his left eye. That's a serious accusation. I opened the second folder. These are the bank records. Your signature on every deposit slip. Your business address on every invoice. Your contact information on every vendor agreement. Percival, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding was mine. Trusting you with operational oversight. Believing you were managing vendors in good faith. Assuming my partner wouldn't systematically exclude me from my own client relationships. Reed leaned back in his chair. The casual demeanor was gone now. In its place was something colder. More calculating. You can't prove intent. I don't need to prove intent. The Banking and Investment Fraud Committee will handle that determination. Reed's composure cracked. You contacted the committee? This morning. Judicial Oversight Auditor Natalie Ford will be here at 10 o'clock to begin the formal investigation. The silence stretched between us. Reed stared at the documents spread across the table. His career, his reputation, his freedom, all reduced to paper and digital trails. How long have you known? 6 days. Since the Morrison billing alert. Reed nodded slowly. The system flagged the duplicate payment. Your mistake was getting greedy. Small amounts over time I might never have noticed. But 3 separate payments to the same vendor in 1 week? That triggered automatic compliance review. I needed the money. You stole the money. From clients who trusted us. From a firm that gave you partnership track. From a colleague who considered you family. Reed stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the morning traffic was building on North First Street. Normal people heading to normal jobs. People who didn't embezzle from trust accounts or betray their partners. What happens now? Natalie Ford will conduct a complete audit. Every case we've worked together. Every vendor payment. Every client account. The committee will determine criminal charges. And the firm? The partners are meeting this afternoon. I expect your termination will be immediate. Bar complaint follows within 48 hours. Reed turned back toward me. You know this destroys both of us. The clients will lose confidence. The other partners will question your oversight. Your reputation takes a hit too. My reputation survives truth. Yours doesn't survive theft. At exactly 10 o'clock, Natalie Ford arrived with 2 assistants and a briefcase full of audit materials. She was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with the precise manner of someone who had investigated dozens of similar cases. Mr. Zimmerman, thank you for your cooperation. Mr. Elmhurst, I'll need to speak with you privately after I review the initial. Reed gathered his personal items from his office while Natalie's team began their systematic review. I watched him pack his law school diploma, his bar admission certificate, his family photos. 6 years of partnership reduced to a cardboard box. The audit took 3 days. Natalie's team examined every transaction, every email, every document related to our shared cases. They interviewed clients, vendors, and staff members. They reconstructed the timeline of Reed's systematic exclusion strategy. The final report was devastating. Reed had not only stolen $340,000 in direct payments, but had also diverted potential business worth an estimated $200,000 in future revenue. He had created false vendor relationships, manipulated client communications, and systematically undermined my role in case management. The partners' meeting lasted 4 hours. I presented the answered questions and outlined the steps I had taken to protect client interests. The vote was unanimous. Reed's partnership was terminated immediately. The firm would pursue full restitution and cooperate with criminal prosecution. 2 weeks later, the state bar filed formal disciplinary charges. Reed's license was suspended pending investigation. The district attorney's office opened a criminal case for embezzlement and fraud. But the most satisfying moment came when I called each affected client personally. I explained the situation, outlined the restitution process, and assured them of continued representation. Not a single client left the firm. Mrs. Patterson, our longest-standing client, summed it up best. "Percival, we trust you. We always have. One bad actor doesn't change that." The criminal trial took 8 months. Reed pled guilty to embezzlement and fraud charges. He received 2 years in state prison and was ordered to pay full restitution. His law license was permanently revoked. I testified at the sentencing hearing, not for revenge, but for closure. The judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement. "Your Honor, the defendant didn't just steal money. He stole trust. He exploited professional relationships and damaged the integrity of our legal system. But he also taught me something valuable about vigilance and verification." Reed looked at me from the defendant's table. No anger, no defiance, just the hollow expression of someone who had lost everything for temporary gain. The judge sentenced him to the maximum term. "Mr. Elmhurst, you violated the most fundamental principle of legal practice, the duty to your clients and colleagues. This court finds your actions particularly egregious, given the trust placed in you." After the hearing, I walked out of the courthouse into the afternoon sunlight. The case was closed. The restitution was complete. The firm had survived and grown stronger. But I knew the real work was just beginning. 6 months later, I stood in the conference room of my new practice. Zimmerman Legal Consulting occupied the 15th floor of a downtown San Jose high-rise. The view stretched across Silicon Valley, a reminder of how far I had traveled. The boutique firm had dissolved by mutual agreement 3 months after Reed's sentencing. The partners decided to pursue separate ventures. No animosity, just recognition that some chapters need to cleanly. My new practice focused exclusively on legal compliance and fraud prevention. The irony wasn't lost on me. Reed's betrayal had created my specialty. "Mr. Zimmerman?" My assistant knocked on the door. "The Santa Clara Bar Association is here for the workshop setup." I nodded. Today marked my 4th presentation this quarter. I lead alumni workshops on post-betrayal career pivoting. The demand surprised me. Apparently, professional betrayal was more common than anyone wanted to admit. The workshop attendees filed in. 15 attorneys, all carrying similar wounds. A family law practitioner whose partner had stolen client settlements. A corporate lawyer whose associate had sold confidential merger information. A criminal defense attorney whose paralegal had been feeding case details to prosecutors. "Good morning," I began. 6 months ago, I discovered my trusted colleague had been systematically stealing from our clients. Today, I want to share what I learned about rebuilding after betrayal. I clicked to the first slide. Trust is the foundation of legal practice. When that foundation cracks, you have 2 choices: abandon the building or rebuild it stronger. The questions came quickly. How do you verify financial controls? What red flags should trigger investigation? How do you explain gaps in employment to potential clients? The key, I explained, is understanding that betrayal reveals systemic weaknesses. Reed succeeded because our oversight was insufficient. The solution isn't eliminating trust. It's implementing verification. After the workshop, I returned to my office. 3 new client inquiries waited on my desk. A tech startup needed compliance protocols. A medical practice wanted fraud prevention systems. A law firm requested a security audit. The phone rang. Isadora Blackwood's name appeared on the caller ID. "Percival, I have news. The state bar just approved our joint proposal for mandatory fraud prevention training. Starting next year, all California attorneys will complete annual workshops." I smiled. Reed would hate knowing his crimes led to better protection for everyone else. "Justice has many forms," she replied. Sometimes the best revenge is prevention. That evening I walked through downtown San Jose. The streets buzzed with tech workers heading home. The city had changed since I started practicing law here. More towers, more traffic, more opportunity. But some things remained constant. Trust still mattered, integrity still counted, and vigilance was still the price of professional survival. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Patterson. Saw the article about your new practice in the legal journal. Proud of you, Percival. You turned poison into medicine. I stopped at the corner where Reed and I used to grab coffee between court appearances. The cafe was still there. Different owners. Same location. Life moved, even when individuals fell behind. The betrayal had cost me a partnership, several friendships, and countless hours of sleep. But it had also given me clarity about my purpose and the strength to rebuild on my own terms. I looked up at my office building, lights still glowing in scattered windows. Somewhere up there, my case files waited. New clients, new challenges, new opportunities to protect what mattered. The evening air carried the scent of jasmine from the courthouse gardens. Spring in San Jose. A season of renewal and growth. I had learned to trust again, but with boundaries. To verify everything, but without paranoia. To help others navigate the aftermath of professional betrayal while building something better from the wreckage. Reed's prison sentence would in 18 months. His law license was gone forever. His reputation was destroyed. His future was uncertain. Mine was just beginning. It was finally over, and the silence felt earned.